Hare Krishna, everyone. Welcome back to the daily readings of Srila Prabhupada's books. Every day we do this. I mean every day, 7 days a week, except for when I'm on a long haul flight. And the first day I came back from the long haul flight, this time here because of the effect of the long haul flight. But anyway, here we are. And we're taking this journey together, which, by the way, once it's finished, where we have the whole Bhagavatam recorded like this, with the lovely reflections of all of the Vaishnavas from around the world, and Q&A and questions and discussions, it's going to be quite a product. The whole Bhagavatam done like this, the whole thing. Every word of it discussed. There's no product like this in the world. It's unique. So if anybody has any brilliant ideas about what we can do with that, of course I'm going to have to get some copyright permissions from the BBT, or maybe it will even be a BBT publication. It could be. Anyway, we're very happy to be here and happy here at the Olive Tree Cottage, which is now Olive Tree College, only because we couldn't get wisteria. Although this is very nice here. It's very nice, very pleasant. And all right, without further ado, we're going to read Sanatana Goswami's glorification. Oh, by the way, Rati Manjari, if you're listening, hello, Rati, come in, Rati. We just got brand new microphones, and they are, according to my techie, world class. So give us your professional review on it. Thank you. And we'll get to your question that we forgot to answer yesterday. Hare Krishna. Today. Okay. Sanatana Goswami's glorification of the Srimad-Bhagavatam, which, by the way, is the topmost literature of all the Vedic literatures. The Summum Bonum, written by Vyasadeva in his maturity, after he had, of course, it's an eternal scripture, but it came through the consciousness of Vyasadeva in meditation. He was thinking, Vyasadeva, after he had divided. Vyas means to divide. After he had divided the one Veda into four, and all the verses were there, but they were mixed up. It was like there's different kinds of mantras in the Vedas meant to be invoked at different stages and different kinds of yagyas, sacrifices for Vishnu. And they are likened by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur to be like different kinds of jewels. So you may have a bag of jewels, but the diamonds, emeralds, rubies, sapphires, all in one bag. But then what Vyasadeva was, he took out the diamonds and put them over here, took out the rubies and put them over here, took out the emeralds, put them over here, put out the sapphires and put them over here, so they were organized. And that alone was a lifetime of work. And those, by the way, he doesn't claim authorship. He just edited them. And then he compiled the Upanishads, which were also a part of the Vedas, Shruti. And then he compiled or edited or reorganized edited, you'd say, the Puranas, all the Puranas. And then the Vedanta Sutra, which is and now we're getting that. Now he wrote the Vedanta Sutra. These other jobs are editing jobs. He authored the Vedanta Sutra. He authored the Mahabharata as a summary study of all the Puranas. Vedanta Sutra, a summary study of all the Vedas and Upanishads. And after he had done all of that, he didn't feel satisfied. I mean, every topic that anybody could imagine or is capable of assimilating in the Kali Yuga was in what he had already written, and still he didn't feel satisfied. And then he came to the conclusion himself, I think I've neglected to properly glorify the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the source of all these things. And then, in the next chapter of the Bhagavatam, Narada Muni shows up, just when he was feeling like that. And so Narada Muni looked at him and he said, "Why are you so morose?" And then he said, "Gurudev, you can enter the hearts of anyone and see, so you tell me. I don't know." But he had an idea. But then, because he was a literary incarnation of Krishna, no one else could do what he did, except for Krishna. So then he confirmed what he had already understood intuitively. You're misleading human society, because you talked about everything, and you talked about Krishna, the Supreme Lord, also, but you mixed it with so many other things. The people of the Kali Yuga, they will take advantage of those other things to avoid the pure devotional service of Krishna. So you should write a book about that. And then, if you remember right, Vyasadeva went into trance. And there he saw Krishna. He saw the external energy. He saw the marginal energy. He saw everything. And then he brought, by his meditation, from the Bhagavatam out, from the unmanifest state to the manifest state. And that's the function of the original rishis. There's different kinds of rishis. The original rishis, who come mind-born son of Brahma, they can bring Vedic literatures that are either forgotten or that hadn't come into the material world manifest through their meditation. And then there's called a Shuddha Rishi, which means they hear from those rishis and then bring, So, Bhagavatam. So Bhagavatam is the purest. There's nothing in the Bhagavatam that isn't pure. So now let's hear Sanatana Goswami's glorification of the Bhagavatam to see if it matches more or less what I just said. Okay. And it goes like this. I almost did the Namastika of Rupa Goswami. Okay. Sarva Shastrab Nipiyusha Sarva Vedaika Satpala Sarva Siddhanta Ratnadya Sarva Lokaika Drikprada. O nectar from the ocean of all scriptures, singular fruit of all the Vedas, rich mine of the precious gems of all conclusive truths. You are the only giver of sight to all the worlds. Sarva Bhagavata Prana Srimad-Bhagavata Prabho Kalidwandodita Ditya Shri Krishna Parivartita. O life air of all the Supreme Lord's devotees, O Master, Srimad-Bhagavatam, you are the sun risen in the darkness of Kali. You are the exact image of Sri Krishna. Paramananda Pataya Prema Varshakshadayate Sarvada Sarvasevyaya Shri Krishnaya Namostume. I bow down to you, who are supremely blissful to read. Your every syllable pours down a flood of prema. You can always be served by everyone. You are Sri Krishna himself. Madeka Bando Matsangin Madguro Man Mahadana Mannishtadaga Mad Bhagya Mad Ananda Namostute. My only friend, my constant companion, my spiritual master, my great wealth, my savior, my good fortune, my source of ecstasy. I bow down to you. Asadu, sadhu tadayin, atini chochata kada, hanamunchagada chinmam, premna rit kantayospura. O bestower of saintliness to the unsaintly, O exalter of the most fallen, no excuses. Please never leave me. Always appear in my heart and my voice with pure love. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So, here we are. We've reached the 10th canto, the best of the best of the best of the best. And we're at text 13 of the chapter which describes the autumn season in Vrndavana. So we're in the middle of it, but anybody who wants to hear the whole thing, they can go back and listen to yesterday's reading. Text 13. As all creatures of the land and water took advantage of the newly fallen rainfall, their forms became attractive and pleasing, just as a devotee becomes beautiful by engaging in the service of the Supreme Lord. Purport. Srila Prabhupada comments as follows. We have practical experience of this with our students of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. Before becoming students, they were dirty looking. Although they had naturally beautiful personal features, but due to having no information of Krishna consciousness, they appeared very dirty and wretched. Since they have taken to Krishna consciousness, their health is improved, and by following the rules and regulations, they have increased their bodily luster. When they are dressed in saffron-colored cloth, with tilak on their foreheads, and beads in their hands and on their necks, they look exactly as if they have come from Vaikuntha. Text 14. One time in Los Angeles, Jayananda was there, and he came in to Prabhupada's room, and he was very tall, Jayananda, and he had just bathed, and he had his tilak on, and he was wearing his saffron cloth. And Prabhupada looked up and he went, "Oh, Jayananda looks just like Lord Chaitanya." Text 14. Where the rivers join the ocean, it becomes agitated. Its waves blown about by the wind, just as the mind of an immature yogi becomes agitated because he is still tainted by lust and attached to the objects of sense gratification. Text 15. Just as devotees whose minds are absorbed in the personality of Godhead remain peaceful even when attacked by all sorts of dangers, the mountains in the rainy season were not at all disturbed by the repeated striking of the rain-bearing clouds. Purport. When splashed by torrents of rain, the mountains are not shaken. Rather, they are cleansed of dirt and become resplendent and beautiful. Similarly, an advanced devotee of the Supreme Lord is not shaken from his devotional program by disturbing conditions, which instead cleanse his heart of the dust of attachment to this world. Thus, the devotee becomes beautiful and resplendent by tolerating difficult conditions. In fact, a devotee accepts all reverses in life as the mercy of Lord Krishna, realizing that all suffering is due to the sufferer's own previous misdeeds. Text 16. During the rainy season, the roads, not being cleansed, become covered with grass and debris, and were thus difficult to make out. These roads were like religious scriptures that brahmanas no longer study, and that thus become corrupted and covered over with the passage of time. Message: don't stop reading Prabhupada's books. I'm going to read it again. During the rainy season, the roads, not being cleansed, became covered with grass and debris, and were thus difficult to make out. These roads were like religious scriptures that brahmanas no longer study, and that thus become corrupted and covered over with the passage of time. Don't stop reading Srila Prabhupada's books. Text 17. Though the clouds are the well-wishing friends of all living beings, the lightning, fickle in its affinities, moved from one group of clouds to another, like lusty women, unfaithful even to virtuous men. Purport. Srila Prabhupada comments, during the rainy season, lightning appears in one group of clouds and then immediately in another group of clouds. This phenomenon is compared to a lusty woman who does not fix her mind on one man. A cloud is compared to a qualified person because it pours rain and gives sustenance to many people. A man who is qualified similarly gives sustenance to many living creatures, such as family members or many workers in business. Unfortunately, his whole life can be disturbed by a wife who divorces him. When the husband is disturbed, the whole family is ruined. The children are dispersed or the business is closed and everything is affected. It is therefore recommended that a woman desiring to advance in Krishna consciousness peacefully live with the husband, and that the couple not separate under any condition. The husband and wife should control sex indulgence and concentrate their minds on Krishna consciousness so their life may be successful. After all, in the material world, a man requires a woman and a woman requires a man. When they are combined, they should live peacefully in Krishna consciousness and should not be restless like the lightning flashing from one group of clouds to another. Text 18. When the curved bow of Indra, the rainbow, appeared in the sky, which had the quality of thundering sound, it was unlike ordinary bows because it did not rest upon a string. Similarly, when the Supreme Lord appears in this world, which is the interaction of the material qualities, he is unlike ordinary persons because he remains free from all material qualities and independent of all material conditions. Purport. Srila Prabhupada comments as follows. Sometimes, in addition to the roaring thunder of the clouds, there is an appearance of a rainbow, which stands as a bow without a string. Usually a bow stays in the curved position because it is tied at its two ends by the bowstring, But in the rainbow there is no such string, and yet it rests in the sky so beautifully. Similarly, when the Supreme Personality of Godhead descends to this material world, he appears just like an ordinary human being. But he is not resting on any material condition. In the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says that he appears by his internal potency, which is free from the bondage of the external potency. What is bondage for the ordinary creature is freedom for the personality of Godhead. Text 19. During the rainy season, the moon was prevented from appearing directly by the covering of the clouds, which were themselves illumined by the moon's rays. Similarly, the living being in material existence is prevented from appearing directly by the covering of the false ego, which is itself illumined by the consciousness of the pure soul. Purport. The analogy given here is excellent. During the rainy season, we cannot see the moon in the sky, but because the moon is covered by clouds. These clouds, however, are radiant with the glow of the moon's own rays. Similarly, in our conditioned material existence, we cannot directly perceive the soul because our consciousness is covered by the false ego, which is the false identification with the material world and the material body. Yet it is the soul's own consciousness that illumines the false ego. As the Gita describes, the energy of the soul is consciousness, and when this consciousness manifests through the screen of false ego, it appears as dull material consciousness, in which there is no direct vision of the soul or God. In the material world, even great philosophers ultimately resort to hazy ambiguities when speaking about the absolute truth, just as the cloudy sky manifests only a dull and indirect in a dull and only indirect way. Oh, I have to say that again. I'm sorry, I misread it. I'm getting carried away here. Hare Krishna. In the material world, even great philosophers ultimately resort to hazy ambiguities when speaking about the absolute truth, just as the cloudy sky manifests only in a dull and indirect way the iridescent light of the moon. In material life, our false ego is often enthusiastic, hopeful, and apparently aware of various material affairs. And such consciousness encourages us to push on in material existence. But in truth, we are merely experiencing the dull reflection of our original pure consciousness, which is Krishna consciousness, direct perception of the soul and God. Not realizing that the false ego merely hampers and dulls our real spiritual consciousness, which is fully enlightened and blissful, we mistakenly think that material consciousness is full of knowledge and happiness. This is comparable to thinking that the luminous clouds are lighting up the night sky, while in fact it is the moonshine that illumines the sky and the clouds that merely dull and hamper the moonshine. The clouds appear luminous because they are filtering and impeding the brilliant rays of the moon. Similarly, at times material consciousness appears pleasurable or enlightened because it is screening or filtering the original blissful and enlightened consciousness coming directly from the soul. If we can understand the ingenious analogy given in this verse, we can easily advance in Krishna consciousness. Text 20. The peacocks become festive and cried out of a joyful greeting when they saw the clouds arrive, just as people distressed in household life feel pleasure when the pure devotees of the infallible Supreme Lord visit them. Purport. After a dry summer season, the peacocks become jubilant with the arrival of the first thundering rain clouds, and thus they dance in great happiness. Srila Prabhupada comments, we have practical experience that many of our students were dry and morose previous to their coming to the Krishna consciousness. But having come in contact with devotees, they are now dancing like jubilant peacocks before we got old. Oh. Text 21. Now we just dance jubilantly in our hearts. 21. The trees had grown thin and dry, but after they drank the newly fallen rainwater through their feet, their various bodily features blossomed. Similarly, one whose body has grown thin and weak from austerity again exhibits his healthy bodily features upon enjoying the material objects gained through that austerity in Shamagori's Prasadam. Oh, that's good. Purport. The word pada means foot, and pa means drinking. Trees are called padapa because they drink through their roots, which are likened to feet. Upon drinking the newly fallen rainwater, the trees in Vrndavana began to manifest new leaves, sprouts, and blossoms, and they thus enjoyed new growth. Similarly, materialistic persons often perform austerities to acquire the object of their desire. For example, politicians in America undergo grueling austerities while traveling about the countryside, campaigning for election. Businessmen also will often deny personal comfort to make their business successful. Such austere persons, upon acquiring the fruits of their austerity, again become healthy and satisfied, like trees eagerly drinking the rainwater after enduring the austerity of a dry, hot summer. 22. The cranes continued dwelling on the shores of the lakes, although the shores were agitated during the rainy season, just as materialistic persons with contaminated minds always remain at home, despite the many disturbances there. Purport. During the rainy season, there are often mudslides around the shores of lakes, and thorny bushes, stones, and other debris sometimes accumulate there. Despite all these inconveniences, ducks and cranes continue meandering around the lake shores. Similarly, innumerable painful occurrences are always disturbing family life, but a materialistic man never even considers leaving his family in the hands of his grown sons and going away for spiritual improvement. He regards such an idea as shocking and uncivilized because he is completely ignorant of the absolute truth and his relationship to that truth. Text 23. When Indra sent forth his rains, the floodwaters broke through the irrigation dikes in the agricultural fields, just as in the Kali Yuga, the atheists' false theories break down the boundaries of Vedic injunctions. Text 24. The clouds, impelled by the winds, released their nectarian water for the benefit of all living beings, just as kings, instructed by their Brahmana priests, dispense charity to the citizens. Purport. Srila Prabhupada comments, in the rainy season, the clouds, tossed by the wind, deliver water that is welcomed like nectar. When the Vedic followers, the Brahmanas, inspire rich men like kings and the wealthy mercantile community to give charity in the performance of great sacrifices, the distribution of such wealth is also nectarian. The four sections of human society, namely the Brahmanas, the Kshatriyas, the Vaishyas, and the Shudras, are meant to live peacefully in a cooperative mood. This is possible when they are guided by expert Vedic Brahmanas, who perform sacrifices and distribute wealth equally. Text 25. When the Vrindavan forest had thus become resplendent, filled with ripe dates and jambu fruits, Lord Krishna, surrounded by his cows and cowherd boyfriends and accompanied by Sri Balarama, entered that forest to enjoy. 26. The cows had to move slowly because of their weighty milk bags, but they quickly ran to the Supreme Personality of Godhead as soon as he called them, their affection for him causing their udders to become wet. Our acharyas comment that Krishna has crystal beads, japa beads, and he calls the name of the cows on the beads. Purport. Srila Prabhupada comments, the cows being fed by new grasses became very healthy, and their milk bags were all very full. When Lord Krishna called them by name, they immediately came to him out of affection, and in their joyful condition the milk flowed from their bags. 27. The Lord saw the joyful aborigine girls in the forest, the trees dripping sweet sap, and the mountain waterfalls whose resounding indicated there were caves nearby. 28. When it rained, the Lord would sometimes enter a cave or the hollow of a tree to play and to eat roots and fruits. Purport. Srila Sanatana Goswami explains that during the rainy season, bulbs and roots are very tender and palatable, and Lord Krishna would eat them along with the wild fruits found in the forest. Lord Krishna and his young boyfriends would sit in the hollow of a tree or within a cave and enjoy pastimes while waiting for the rain to stop. Lord Krishna would take his meal of boiled rice and yogurt sent from home in the company of Lord Sankarshan and the cowherd boys who regularly ate with him. They would all sit down to eat on a large stone near the water. Texts 30 and 31. Lord Krishna watched the contented bulls, calves, and cows sitting on the green grass and grazing with closed eyes. And he saw that the cows were tired from the burden of their heavy milk bags. Thus observing the beauty and opulence of Vrindavan's rainy season, a perennial source of great happiness, the Lord offered all respect to that season, which was expanded from his own internal potency. Purport. The lush beauty of the rainy season in Vrindavan is meant to enhance the pleasure pastimes of Lord Krishna. Thus, to set the scene for the Lord's loving affairs, his internal potency makes all the arrangements described in this chapter. Text 32. While Lord Rama and Lord Keshava were thus dwelling in Vrindavan, the fall season arrived, when the sky is cloudless, the water clear, and the wind gentle. The autumn season, which regenerated the lotus flowers, also restored the various bodies of water to their original purity, just as the process of devotional service purifies the minds of the fallen yogis when they return to it. 34. Autumn cleared the sky of clouds, let the animals get out of their crowded living conditions, cleaned the earth of its covering of mud and purified the water of contamination, in the same way that loving service rendered to Lord Krishna frees the members of the four spiritual orders from their respective troubles. Purport. Every human being must perform the prescribed duties corresponding to one of the four spiritual orders of life. These divisions are 1. Celibate student life, brahmacharya; 2. Married life, grihastha; 3. Retired life, vanaprastha; and 4. Renounced life, sannyas. A brahmachari must perform many menial duties during his student life, but as he becomes advanced in loving service to Krishna, his superiors recognize his spiritual status and elevate him to higher duties. The innumerable obligations performed on behalf of wife and children constantly harass a householder, but as he becomes advanced in loving service to Krishna, he is automatically elevated by the laws of nature to more enjoyable spiritual occupations, and he somehow minimizes material duties. Those in the vanaprastha or retired order of life also perform many duties, and these can also be replaced by ecstatic loving service to Krishna. Similarly, renounced life has many natural difficulties, not the least of which is that sannyasis or renounced men are inclined to meditate on the impersonal aspect of the absolute truth. As stated in Bhagavad Gita 12.5, klesho dikatadas tesham abhyakta sakta chetasam. For those whose minds are attached to the unmanifested, impersonal feature of the Lord, advancement is exceedingly painful. But as soon as a sannyasi takes to preaching the glories of Krishna in every town and village, his life becomes a blissful sequence of beautiful spiritual realizations. In the autumn season, the sky returns to its natural blue color. The vanishing of the clouds is like the vanishing of troublesome duties in brahmachari life. Just after summer comes the rainy season, when the animals sometimes become disturbed by the torrential storms and thus huddle together. But the autumn season signals the time for the animals to go to their respective areas and live more peacefully. This represents a householder becoming free from the harassment of family duties and being able to devote more of his time to spiritual responsibilities, which are the real goal of life for himself and his family. The removal of the muddy layer on the earth is like the removal of the inconveniences of vanaprastha life, and the purification of the water is like the sanctification of sannyas life by one's preaching the glories of Krishna without sex desire. Text 35. The clouds, having given up all they possessed, shone forth with purified effulgence. Just like peaceful sages who have given up all material desires and are thus free of all sinful propensities. Purport. When the clouds are filled with water, they are dark and cover the sun's rays, just as the material mind of an impure man covers the soul shining within. But when the clouds pour down their rain, they become white and then brilliantly reflect the shining sun, just as a man who gives up all material desires and sinful propensities becomes purified, and then brilliantly reflects his own soul and the Supreme Soul within. Text 36. During this season, the mountains sometimes released their pure water and sometimes did not. Just as experts in transcendental science sometimes gives the nectar of transcendental knowledge and sometimes do not. Purport. The first part of this chapter described the rainy season, and the second part has been dealing with the autumn season, which begins when the rain stops. During the rainy season, water always flows from the mountains, but during the autumn, the water sometimes flows and sometimes does not. Similarly, great saintly teachers sometimes speak expansively on spiritual knowledge, and sometimes they are silent. The self-realized soul is closely in touch with the Supreme Soul, and according to his desires, a competent spiritual scientist may or may not describe the absolute truth, depending on the specific circumstances. 37. The fish swimming in the increasingly shallow water did not at all understand that the water was diminishing. Just as foolish family men cannot see how the time they have left to live. I got to read this again. This is a good one. The fish swimming in the increasingly shallow water did not at all understand that the water was diminishing. Just as foolish family men cannot see how the time they have left to live is diminishing with every passing day. Purport. After the rainy season, the water gradually goes down. But stupid fish do not understand this. Thus they are often stranded on the lake shores and riverbanks. Similarly, those infatuated with family life do not understand that the remainder of their life is constantly decreasing. Thus they fail to perfect their Krishna consciousness and are stranded in the cycle of birth and death. 38. Just as a miserly, poverty-stricken person, overly absorbed in family life, suffers because he cannot control his senses, the fish swimming in the shallow water had to suffer the heat of the autumn sun. Purport. Although as described in the previous verse, unintelligent fish are not aware of the diminishing water, one may think these fish are still happy according to the old proverb, ignorance is bliss. But even the ignorant fish are scorched by the autumn sun. Similarly, although an attached man may consider his ignorance of spiritual life blissful, he is constantly disturbed by the problems of family life, and indeed, his uncontrolled senses lead him into a situation of unrelieved anguish. 39. Gradually, the different areas of land gave up their muddy condition, and the plants grew past their unripe stage. In the same way, the sober sages give up egotism and possessiveness. These are based on things different from the real self, namely the material body and its byproducts. Purport. The word adishu in this verse indicates that byproducts of the body, such as children, home, and wealth. Text 40. With the arrival of autumn, the ocean and the lakes become silent, their water still, just like a sage who has desisted from all material activities and given up his recitation of Vedic mantras. Purport. One recites ordinary Vedic mantras for material promotion, mystic power, and impersonal salvation. But when a sage is completely free of personal desire, he vibrates the transcendental glories of the Supreme Lord exclusively. Srimad-Bhagavatam ki jai. Sri Vyasadeva ki jai. 41. In the same way that the practitioners of yoga bring their senses under strict control to check their consciousness from flowing out through the agitated senses, the farmers erected strong muddy banks to keep the water within their rice fields from draining out. Purport. Srila Prabhupada comments, in autumn, farmers save the water within the fields by building strong walls so that the water containing within the field cannot run out. There is hardly any hope for new rainfall, therefore they want to save whatever is in the field. Similarly, a person who is actually advanced in self-realization protects his energy by controlling the senses. It is advised that after the age of 50, one should retire from family life and conserve the energy of the body for utilization in the advancement of Krishna consciousness. Unless one is able to control the senses and engage them in the transcendental loving service of Mukunda, there is no possibility of salvation. Text 42. The autumn moon relieved all creatures of the suffering caused by the sun's rays, just as wisdom relieves a person of the misery caused by his identifying with his material body, and as Lord Mukunda relieves Vrindavan's ladies of the distress caused by their separation from him. Text 43. Free of clouds and filled with clearly visible stars, the autumn sky shone brilliantly, just like the spiritual consciousness of one who has directly experienced the purport of the Vedic scriptures. Purport. The clear and starry autumn sky can also be compared to the pure heart of the devotee. The spiritual nature is always brilliant, clean and blissful. And this spiritual nature, called Vaikuntha, immediately satisfies all the desires of the soul. This is the secret of Krishna consciousness. The full moon shone in the sky, surrounded by stars, just as Sri Krishna, the Lord of the Yadu dynasty, shone brilliantly on the earth, surrounded by all the Vishnus. Purport. Srila Sanatana Goswami explains that in Vrindavan, the full moon is eternally risen, and this full moon is like the full manifestation of the Absolute Truth, Sri Krishna. When he was manifest on earth, Lord Krishna was surrounded by prominent members of the Vrishni dynasty, such as Nanda, Upananda, Vasudeva, and Akrura. 45. Except for the gopis, whose hearts had been stolen by Krishna, the people could forget their suffering by embracing the wind coming from the flower-filled forest. This wind was neither hot nor cold. 46. By the influence of the autumn season, all the cows, doe, women, and female birds became fertile and were followed by the respective mates in search of sexual enjoyment, just as activities performed for the service of the Supreme Lord are automatically followed by all beneficial results. Purport. Srila Prabhupada comments, on the arrival of the autumn season, all the cows, deer, birds, and females in general become pregnant, because in that season, generally all the husbands become impelled by sex desire. This is exactly like the transcendentalists who, by the grace of the Supreme Lord, are bestowed with the benediction of their destinations in life. Srila Rupa Goswami has instructed in his Upadeshamrita that one should perform devotional service with great enthusiasm, patience, and conviction, and should follow the rules and regulations, keep oneself clean from material contamination, and stay in the association of devotees. By following these principles, one is sure to achieve the desired result of devotional service. For he who patiently follows the regulated principles of devotional service, the time will come when he will achieve the result, as the wives reap results by becoming pregnant. Text 47. O King Parikshit, when the autumn sun rose, all the lotus flowers blossomed happily, except the night-blooming kumut. Just as in the presence of a strong ruler, everyone becomes fearless, except the thieves. In exceptional cases, the thieves become more anyway, fearless. Text 48. In all the towns and villages, people held great festivals, performing the Vedic fire sacrifice for honoring and tasting the first grains of the new harvest, along with similar celebrations that followed local custom and tradition. Thus the earth, rich with newly grown grain and especially beautified by the presence of Krishna in Balaram, shone beautifully as an expansion of the Supreme Lord. Purport. The word agrayanahi refers to a particular authorized Vedic sacrifice, and the word indriyai refers to folk ceremonies that have somewhat worldly objectives. Srila Prabhupada comments as follows. During autumn, the fields become filled with ripened grains. At that time, the people become happy over the harvests and observe various ceremonies, such as Navana, the offering of new grains to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The new grains are first offered to the deities in various temples, and all are invited to take sweet rice made with these new grains. There are other religious ceremonies and methods of worship, particularly in Bengal, where the greatest of all such ceremonies is held, called Durga Puja. Text 49. The merchants, sages, kings, and brahmachari students, kept in by the rain, were at last free to go out and attain their desired objects, just as those who achieve perfection in this life, when the proper time comes, leave the material body and attain their respective forms. Purport. Srila Prabhupada comments. In Vrndavana, the autumn season was very beautiful. Then, because of the presence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna and Balaram. The mercantile community, the royal order, and the great sages were free to move to achieve their desired benedictions. Similarly, the transcendentalists, when freed from the encagement of the material body, also achieved their desired goal. During the rainy season, the mercantile community cannot move from one place to another, and so do not get their desired profit. Nor can the royal order go from one place to another to collect taxes from the people. As for saintly persons who must travel to preach transcendental knowledge, they also are restrained by the rainy season. But during the autumn, all of them leave their confines. In the case of the transcendentalist, be he a jnani, a yogi, or a devotee, because of the material body, he cannot actually enjoy spiritual achievement. But as soon as he gives up the body, or after death, the jnani merges into the spiritual effulgence of the Supreme Lord, the yogi transfers himself to the various higher planets, and the devotee goes to the planet of the Supreme Lord, Goloka Vrindavan, or the Vaikunthas, and thus enjoys his eternal spiritual life. Thus end the purports of the humble servants of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, to the 10th canto, 20th chapter of Srimad-Bhagavatam, entitled The Rainy Season and Autumn in Vrindavan. Haribol. Okay, I think I need to take a vote. Now listen, it's 5 after 7. But due to our little preamble and, testing of the mics and all this stuff, we didn't really start reading until 20 after. I checked my watch. So we can either stop here and start to utilize these new, nice, fresh microphones with the reflections and realizations and discussions of the Vaishnavas, or we can read for another 20 minutes, or both.
Next chapter has 20 verses.
Really? Only 20?
I believe so.
You checked in? Be sure.
I read it this morning.
I mean, Radha reminded this to me the other day. There's only 4 more verses, or 9 more, or whatever, and no purports. I got halfway through them and there was a purport about this long, and we only had about 5 minutes to go. But I just kept going, and it turned out to be very, very nice. So I generally just submit to the will of the Vaishnavas. So you tell me what to do. I am just a talent here, and I just want to be directed. You always have to have a director. And you're it, Dr. G. Senior person in the room, except for me.
The next chapter is the gopis glorifying the song of Krishna.
And how many?
Verses.
Sold to an American, or sold to a Brit, or whatever. Okay. Let us embark from the we're in the middle of the autumn season now, and this is when these things happen. Right? Kartik is coming. It's about this time, actually. What we're reading about is about this time. A little longer. A little later. All right. Here we go. Chapter 21. The gopis glorified the song of Krishna's flute. This chapter describes how Lord Sri Krishna entered the enchanting forest of Vrndavana upon the arrival of autumn, and the praises the young cowherd girls sang when they heard the vibration of his flute. As Lord Krishna, Lord Balaram, and their cowherd friends entered the forest to graze the cows, Krishna began playing his flute. The gopis heard the enchanting flute song and understood that Krishna was entering the forest. Then they narrated to each other the Lord's various activities. The gopis declared, "To see Lord Krishna playing his flute while taking the cows to pasture is the highest perfection for the eyes. What pious activities has this flute performed that enable him to freely drink the nectar of Sri Krishna's lips? A blessing we cowherd girls find difficult to achieve. Hearing the song of Krishna's flute, the peacocks dance, and all the other creatures become stunned when they see them. Demigoddesses traveling through the sky in their airplanes are vexed by Cupid, and their garments become loose. The ears of the cows stand on end as they drink the nectar of this flute song, and their calves simply stand stunned, the milk they have been drinking from their mother's udders still in their mouths. The birds take shelter of the branches of the trees and close their eyes, listening to the song of Krishna's flute with rapt attention. The flowing rivers become perturbed by conjugal attraction for Krishna, and stopping their flow, embrace Krishna's lotus feet with the arms of their waves, while the clouds serve as parasols to shade Krishna's head from the hot sun. The Aborigine women of the Shabara race, seeing the grass stained by the red kumkum adorning the Lord's lotus feet, smear this vermilion powder upon their breasts and faces to alleviate the distress created by Cupid. Govardhan Hill offers grass and various kinds of fruits and bulbous roots in worship of Lord Sri Krishna. All the non-moving living beings take on the characteristics of moving creatures, and the moving living beings become stationary. These things are all very wonderful. Text 1. Shukadev Goswami said, thus the Vrindavan forest was filled with transparent autumnal waters and cooled by breezes perfumed with the fragrance of lotus flowers growing in the clear lakes. The infallible Lord, accompanied by his cows and cowherd boyfriends, entered that Vrindavan forest. 2. The lakes, rivers, and hills of Vrindavan resounded with the sounds of maddened bees and flocks of birds moving about the flowering trees. In the company of the cowherd boys and Balaram, Madhupati, Sri Krishna, entered that forest, and while herding the cows, he began to vibrate his flute. Purport. As suggested by the words Chakunja Venum, Lord Krishna skillfully blended the sound of his flute with the lovely sounds of Vrindavan's multicolored birds. Thus an irresistible heavenly vibration was created. Text 3. When the young ladies in the cowherd village of Braja heard the song of Krishna's flute, which arouses the influence of Cupid, some of them privately began describing Krishna's qualities to their intimate friends. Text 4. The cowherd girls began to speak about Krishna, but when they remembered his activities, O king, the power of Cupid disturbed their minds, and thus they could not speak. Wearing a peacock feather ornament upon his head, blue karnikara flowers on his ears, a yellow garment as brilliant as gold, and the Vaijayanti garland, Lord Krishna exhibited his transcendental form as the greatest of dancers as he entered the forest of Vrindavan, beautifying it with the marks of his footprints. He filled the holes of his flute with the nectar of his lips, and the cowherd boys sang his glories. Purport. The gopis remembered all the transcendental qualities of Krishna mentioned in this verse. Krishna's artful way of dressing and the beautiful blue flowers placed over his ears excited the gopis' romantic desires. And as he poured the nectar of his lips into his flute, they simply lost themselves in ecstatic love for him. O king, when the young ladies in Braja heard the sound of Krishna's flute, which captivates the minds of all living beings, they all embraced one another and began describing it. Purport. The word iti here indicates that after becoming speechless by remembering Krishna, the cowherd damsels then regained their composure and were thus able to ecstatically describe the sound of Krishna's flute. As a few gopis began to exclaim, and the other gopis realized that they shared the same ecstatic love within their hearts, all of them started embracing one another, overwhelmed with conjugal love for young Krishna. The cowherd girl said, O friends, these eyes, those eyes that see the beautiful faces of the sons of Maharaj Nanda are certainly fortunate. As these two sons enter the forest, surrounded by their friends, driving the cows before them, they hold their flutes to their mouths and glance lovingly upon the residents of Vrindavan. For those who have eyes, we think there is no greater object of vision. Purport. This translation is quoted from Srila Prabhupada's Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adi Leela 4, 155. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has commented as follows. The gopis meant to say, "O friends, if you simply remain in the shackles of family life in this material world, what will you ever get to see? The Creator has granted us these eyes, so let us see the most wonderful thing there is to see, Krishna." The gopis were aware that their mothers or other elder persons might hear their romantic words and disapprove. And thus they said, "Akshan Batam Palam." To see Krishna is the goal for all persons and not simply ourselves. In other words, the gopis indicated that since Krishna is the supreme object of love for everyone, why couldn't they also love him in spiritual ecstasy? According to the acharyas, a different gopi spoke this in each of the following verses through text 19. Text 8. Dressed in a charming variety of garments, upon which their garlands rest, and decorating themselves with peacock feathers, lotuses, lilies, newly grown mango sprouts, and clusters of flower buds, Krishna and Balaram shine forth magnificently among the assembly of cowherd boys. They look just like the best of dancers, appearing on a dramatic stage, and sometimes they sing. Purport. The gopis continued singing their ecstatic song as they remembered the pastimes of Lord Krishna. The gopis wanted to go to the forest where Krishna was performing his pastimes, and while remaining concealed, peer through the leaves of the creepers and see the wonder of Krishna and Balaram dancing and singing with their boyfriends. This was their desire. But because they could not go, they sang this song in ecstatic love. My dear gopis, what auspicious activities must the flute have performed to enjoy the nectar of Krishna's flutes independently and leave only a taste for us gopis for whom that nectar is actually meant. The forefathers of the flute, the bamboo trees, shed tears of pleasure. His mother, the river on whose bank the bamboo was born, feels jubilation, and therefore her blooming lotus flowers are standing like hair on her body. Purport. This translation is quoted from Srila Prabhupada's Chaitanya Charitamrita, Antya 16, 140. In the guise of releasing flowing sap, the bamboo trees are actually crying tears of ecstasy upon seeing their child become an exalted devotee flute of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. Sanatan Goswami gives an alternate explanation. The trees are crying because they are unhappy at not being able to play with Krishna themselves. One object that the trees in Vrndavana should not lament for, that which is impossible for them to obtain. One may object that the trees in Vrndavana should not lament for that which is impossible for them to attain. Just like a beggar certainly does not lament because he is forbidden to meet the king. But the trees are actually just like intelligent persons who suffer when they cannot obtain the goal of life. Thus the trees are crying because they cannot get the nectar of Krishna's lips. 10. O friend, Vrindavan is spreading the glory of the earth, having obtained the treasure of the lotus feet of Krishna, the son of Devaki. The peacocks dance madly when they hear Govinda's flute, and when other creatures see them from the hilltops, they all become stunned. Purport. Srila Sridhar Swami explains that because activities such as those described in this verse do not occur in any other world, the earth is unique. In fact, the earth's glories are being spread by wonderful Vrindavan because it is the place of Krishna's pastimes. The name Devaki also refers to Mother Yashoda, as stated in the Brihad Vishnu Purana. Dve namni nanda bharyaya Yashoda Devaki ticha atak sakyam abhutasya Devakya Shaurijayaya. The wife of Nanda had two names, Yashoda and also Devaki. Therefore it was natural that she, the wife of Nanda, developed friendship with Devaki, the wife of Shauri, Vasudeva. Sri Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains Krishna Lila as follows. In Vrindavan, the peacocks request Krishna, Govinda, please make us dance. Thus Krishna plays his flute, and they surround him in a circle and dance in time with the rhythm of his melody. And while standing in the midst of their dancing, he also sings and dances. Then those peacocks, who were fully satisfied with his musical performance, out of gratitude, offer for his pleasure their own divine feathers. In the usual manner of musical performers, Krishna gladly accepts these presentations and places a feather upon the turban atop his head. Gentle animals such as deer and doves greatly relish the transcendental entertainment presented by Krishna, and to get a good view, they flock to the peaks of hills. Then, as they watch the breathtaking program, they become stunned in ecstasy. Srila Sanatana Goswami comments that because in Vrindavan Krishna goes barefoot and can thus directly mark the earth with the symbols of his lotus feet, that transcendental land is even more glorious than Vaikuntha, where Vishnu wears slippers. Text 11. Blessed are all these foolish deer, because they have approached Maharaj Nanda's son, who is gorgeously dressed and is playing on his flute. Indeed, both the doe and the bucks worship the Lord with looks of love and affection. Purport. This translation is quoted from Srila Prabhupada's Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya 17:36. According to the Acharyas, the gopis were thinking as follows. The female deer can approach Krishna along with their husbands because Krishna is the ultimate object of affection for the male deer. Because of their affection for Krishna, they are encouraged by seeing their wives attracted to him and thus consider their household lives fortunate. Indeed, they become joyful upon seeing how their wives are searching after Krishna, and following along, they urge their wives to go to the Lord. On the other hand, our husbands are jealous of Krishna, and because of their lack of devotion to him, they cannot even stand to smell his fragrance. Therefore, what is the use of our lives? 12. Krishna's beauty and character create a festival for all women. Indeed, when the demigods' wives, flying in airplanes with their husbands, catch sight of him and hear his resonant flute song, their hearts are shaken by Cupid, and they become so bewildered that the flowers fall out of their hair and their belts loosen. Purport. In Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Srila Prabhupada comments, this verse indicates that the transcendental sound of the flute of Krishna extended to all corners of the universe. Also, it is significant that the gopis knew about the different kinds of airplanes flying in the sky. In fact, even while sitting on the laps of their demigod husbands, the demigoddesses become agitated by hearing the sounds of Krishna's flute. Thus the gopis thought that they themselves should not be blamed for their ecstatic conjugal attraction for Krishna, who after all was a cowherd boy from their own village, and thus a natural object of their love. If even demigoddesses become mad after Krishna, how could poor earthly cowherd girls from Krishna's own village avoid having their hearts completely conquered by his loving glances and the sounds of his flute? The gopis also considered that the demigods, although noting their wives' attraction to Krishna, did not become envious. The demigods are actually very refined in culture and intelligence, and therefore, when flying in their airplanes, they regularly take their wives along to see Krishna. The gopis thought, our husbands on the other hand are envious, therefore even the inferior deer are better off than we, and the demigoddesses are also very fortunate, whereas we poor human beings in an intermediate position are most unfortunate. Text 13. Using their upraised ears as vessels, the cows are drinking the nectar of the flute song flowing out of Krishna's mouth. The calves, their mouths full of milk from their mother's moist nipples, stand still as they take Govinda within themselves through their tear-filled eyes and embrace him within their hearts. O Mother, in this forest, all the birds have risen onto the beautiful branches of the trees to see Krishna. With closed eyes, they are simply listening in silence to the sweet vibrations of his flute, and they are not attracted by any other sound. Surely these birds are on the same level as great sages. Purport. The birds resemble sages because they live in the forest, keep their eyes closed, observe silence, and remain motionless. Significantly, it is stated here that even great sages become maddened by the sound of Krishna's flute, which is a completely spiritual vibration. The word ruchira pavalan indicates that even the branches of the trees are transformed in ecstasy when struck by the vibration of Krishna's flute song. Indeed, Brahma, Shiva, and Vishnu, being primordial gods, travel throughout the universe and have extensive knowledge of the science of music. And yet even these great personalities have never heard or composed music like that which emanates from Krishna's flute. Indeed, the birds are so moved by the blissful sound that in their ecstasy they close their eyes and cling to the branches to avoid falling off the trees. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains that the gopis would sometimes address each other as Amba, Mother. Text 15. When the rivers hear the flute song of Krishna, their minds begin to desire him, and thus the flow of their currents is broken and their waters are agitated, moving around in whirlpools. Then, with the arms of their waves, the rivers embrace Murari's lotus feet, and holding on to them, present offerings of lotus flowers. Purport. Even such sacred bodies of water as the Yamuna and the Manasi Ganga are enchanted by the flute song. and thus they are disturbed by conjugal attraction for young Krishna. The gopis are implying that since many different types of living beings are overwhelmed for their intense desire to serve Krishna in the conjugal relationship. Text 16. In the company of Balaram and the cowherd boys, Lord Krishna is continually vibrating his flute as he herds all the animals of Braja, even under the full heat of the summer sun. Seeing this, the cloud in the sky has expanded himself out of love. He is rising high and constructing out of his own body, with its multitude of flower-like droplets of water, an umbrella for the sake of his friend. Purport. Srila Prabhupada states, in his Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the scorching heat of the autumn sunshine was sometimes intolerable, and therefore the clouds in the sky appeared in sympathy above Krishna and Balaram and their boyhood and their boyfriends, while they engaged in blowing their flutes. The clouds served as a soothing umbrella over their heads, just to make friendship with Krishna. 17. The Aborigine women of the Vrindavan area became disturbed by lust when they see the grass marked with the reddish kumkum powder. Endowed with the color of Krishna's lotus feet, this powder originally decorated the breasts of his beloveds, and when the Aborigine women smear it on their faces and breasts, they feel fully satisfied and give up all their anxiety. Purport. Srila Prabhupada explains this verse as follows. The Aborigine girls became fully satisfied when they smeared their faces and breasts with the dust of Vrindavan, which was reddish from the touch of Krishna's lotus feet. The Aborigine girls had very full breasts, and they were also very lusty, but when their lovers touched their breasts, the girls were not very much satisfied. When they came out into the midst of the forest, they saw that while Krishna was walking, some of the leaves and creepers of Vrindavan had turned reddish from the kumkum powder which fell from his lotus feet. His lotus feet are held by the gopis on their breasts, which are smeared with kumkum powder. But when Krishna travels in the Vrindavan forest with Balaram and his boyfriends, the reddish powder falls on the ground. So the lusty Aborigine girls, while looking toward Krishna playing his flute, saw the reddish kumkum on the ground and immediately took it and smeared it all over their faces and breasts. In this way they became fully satisfied, although they were not satisfied when their lovers touched their breasts. All material lusty desires can be immediately satisfied when one comes in contact with Krishna consciousness. Text 18. Hantayam adralabala haridasya bharyo yad rama krishna charanas padashap pramodaha manam tanoti sahago ganayostayoryat pani yasuya vasakandana kandamala. Of all the devotees, this Govardhan hill is the best. O my friends, this hill supplies Krishna and Balaram, along with their calves, cows, and cowherd friends, with all kinds of necessities. Water for drinking, very soft grass, caves, fruits, flowers, and vegetables. In this way, the hill offers respect to the Lord. Being touched by the lotus feet of Krishna and Balaram, Govardhan hill appears very jubilant. Purport. This translation is quoted from Srila Prabhupada's Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya 18:34. Srila Vishwanath Chakrabarti Thakur explains the opulence of Govardhan hill as follows. Paniya refers to the fragrant cool water from the Govardhan waterfalls, which Krishna and Balaram drink and use to wash their feet and mouths. Govardhan also offers other beverages, such as honey, mango juice, and pilu juice. Suyavasa indicates durva grass, used to make the religious offering of arghya. Govardhan also has grass that is fragrant, soft, and conducive to the strong growth of cows and increased production of milk. Thus, this grass is used for feeding the transcendental herds. Kandara refers to the caves where Krishna and Balaram and their friends play, sit, and lie down. These caves give pleasure when the weather is too hot or too cold, or when it is raining. Govardhan also features soft roots for eating, jewels for ornamenting the body, flat places for sitting, and lamps and mirrors in the form of smooth stones, glistening water, and other natural substances. Text 19. My dear friends, as Krishna and Balaram passed through the forest with their cowherd friends leading their cows, they carry ropes to bind the cows' rear legs at the time of milking. When Lord Krishna plays on his flute, the sweet music causes the moving living entities to become stunned and the non-moving trees to tremble with ecstasy. These things are certainly very wonderful. Purport. Krishna and Balaram would sometimes wear their cowherding robes on their heads and sometimes carry them on their shoulders, and thus they were beautifully decorated with all the equipment of cowherd boys. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains that the ropes of Krishna and Balaram are made of yellow cloth and have clusters of pearls at both ends. Sometimes they wear these ropes around their turbans, and the ropes thus become wonderful decorations. Text 20. Thus narrating to one another the playful pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead as he wandered about in the Vrindavan forest, the gopis became fully absorbed in thoughts of him. Purport. In this regard, Srila Prabhupada comments, this is the perfect example of Krishna consciousness. To somehow or other remain always engrossed in thoughts of Krishna. The vivid example is always present in the behavior of the gopis. Therefore, Lord Chaitanya declared that no one can worship the Supreme Lord by any method that is better than the method of the gopis. The gopis were not born in very high Brahmana or Kshatriya families. They were born in the families of Vaishyas, and not in big mercantile communities, but in the families of cowherd men. They were not very well educated, although they heard all sorts of knowledge from the Brahmanas, the authorities of Vedic knowledge. The gopis' only purpose was to remain always absorbed in the thoughts of Krishna. Thus end the purports of the humblest servants of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, to the 10th canto, 21st chapter of Srimad-Bhagavatam, entitled, The Gopis Glorified the Song of Krishna's Flute. Okay, well, thank you, Pundarak Prabhu, for pointing out that we could finish that tonight. It was lovely. I'll start it off, okay? Although I don't feel like saying much of anything because that was just so stunningly beautiful. What can we say about it? But one thing I would like to say, that these purports and verses, some of them were translated directly by Prabhupada, taken from other parts, but And some of them were excerpts from Prabhupada's purports in other places. But the parts that were composed by my dear godbrothers, stunning. Anybody who thinks that they shouldn't read them because they weren't written by Prabhupada, they should think again. That's my contribution to the reflections. Hare Krishna. Okay, we've got a brand new open mic. And we ask you to be very careful with them because so that you maintain them. Flip them on yourself before you speak. Not too far away, not too close, just right about there. Hare Krishna. How nice, huh? How nice. I can see that everyone is stunned in ecstasy and they don't have anything to say. We could. You have it there?
Rati Manjari's question from yesterday.
Yeah. And hold the mic close enough up so that she can hear, otherwise she'll complain. And speak loudly and clearly. Practice being a narrator.
Rati Manjari says from yesterday.
This is from yesterday. Yeah, sorry.
Dear Guru Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. I have a question. Why did Krishna ask his friends to close their eyes when he swallowed the forest fire?
Well, I'm not qualified to know that. The acharyas say different things. I don't remember exactly what each one of them say because my memory is not there and I can't remember. But you know, Krishna is the most everything, which includes the most humble. So one reason could be that he was embarrassed to have them see him swallow a forest fire. The other possibility is he wouldn't want them to see that because it would perhaps ruin their rasa, ruin their ability to see him as just one of them. Because if they saw him swallowing a forest fire, that's one thing. And I mean, killing a demon, that's one thing, but swallowing a forest fire, that's another thing. So I would say that's another possible reason. And you know, I'm sure that there are unlimited reasons, and it's not that you're going to get one reason. I was listening to Gopi today, and he was talking about how there's so many apparent differences, and they're there for so many reasons. Sometimes the same event is being described in a different millennium or a different universe even in the Vedic literatures, even in the Bhagavatam. And sometimes the person who's observing it is different, in a different mood or a different relationship or a different age or something like that, capacity to view, than another person seeing the same thing. And they may see something different. Yes? Shamagori is going to give us her usual Siddhantic statement.
Fortunately, it's not mine. Shivara Maharaj was talking about that once. And he said that the reason why Krishna asked the coward boy to close their eyes because previously they told on him to Mother Yashoda that he ate earth. So he didn't want to see them, that he's now eating fire because they're going to go to Mother Yashoda.
Perfect. Perfect. Yeah, that was wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. Very sweet. Very sweet. Yes, please. This is really a long one, so he can get it easily. You can go all the way to the bedroom and speak from it.
First question is the husbands of the gopis, and they must be very elevated personalities to actually be there in Vrindavan seeing Krishna. But it says they're repulsed and they try to put a spanner in the works. So is that just for a pastime to increase the love of the gopis? How do we see them as personalities in that situation?
Yes, you've come. That's the conclusion. The conclusion is that all the residents of Braja are actually servants of Radha and Krishna. You know, and they all play a part in different parts, and all those parts serve to increase the intensity of the loving exchanges between Radha and Krishna. And when they do have their exchanges, the combined combination of their auras or their rasas or their pleasure spread everywhere in Braj, and all the living beings and all the residents and everyone become tinged, or they enjoy that conjugal ras in different ways, not exactly the conjugal ras, but they enjoy it according to their rasa in different ways, to their own rasas. So the cowherd men, they play that role, you know. And there are very deep comments about this, which I'm not qualified to. Maybe you have some more from Shiva. I know. I've edited a lot of books that Shiva Maharaj wrote, and there are many details about this, which I just, due to age or whatever I can, or length of time that I've heard those things, I've become so absorbed over these last 5-6 years in just reading Prabhupada's books that those other comments that come from the other acharyas that aren't there in Srila Prabhupada's purports, I can't remember them very well. But that's the essence of it. The essence of it is that, you know, it's the consciousness of the gopis that are expressing those thoughts. You know, when they look at the deer and see that the deer and bucks are able to be together and go to Krishna, and they can't because their husbands don't. It's just, they're human, and the bucks and those they're deer, you know. So they don't have the same restrictions, and the human culture, the human religious principles, you know, restrict them from, you know, fulfilling their full desire to be with Krishna. And that's what makes the Parakya Rasa unique and the most intense. It's the reason why Lord Chaitanya taught the method of serving whatever you do in separation from Krishna. So that's what they do. And some of it is just in their minds. All of it practically is in their minds, because everyone is a devotee of Krishna in Braja. They all love Krishna. Even the husbands of the gopis love Krishna. But just to facilitate that relationship, just to facilitate the pleasure and the happiness and the varieties of loving exchange, you know, everyone's there in Braja, playing their different roles, and that's the roles of the husbands. I mean, when Krishna lifted Govardhan Hill, we had one very nice verse in this section. Our acharyas comment that the real reason Krishna lifted Govardhan Hill was that all the Brajbasis were simultaneously, by providence, by Yogamaya or whatever, praying, when will we be able to see Krishna 24/7? And this thing about Indra and all these other things is just incidental. And therefore, when they all finally came underneath the hill, after they overcame Mother Yashoda's cautionary remarks, don't go under there, he's just a boy, and the hill could crash down and we all be killed. And then Krishna talked to her, responded to her in the earshot of everyone else. They were all looking over into there was this big crater, it caused, and they were all looking into it, and they were seeing how pretty beautiful it was, different than they thought. And so then Krishna said, Ma, can't you see? I'm not making any effort at all. Do you see any sweat? Do you see any effort? The hill has become effortless and I'm just standing here. Don't listen to my mother. Come on, you're safe over down here. Then anyways, Maharajari convinced them and they all came down. And then they just were there for 7 days and 7 nights with nothing to do but look at Krishna. And that was everyone. Cowherd men, cowherd women, everyone. And they all exchanged their loving relationships with Krishna according to their rasa, according to their relationship. And therefore that area changed eternally. And our practical realization or practical result of that is that everyone that comes to Govardhan, they feel that they're at home. Even if they're coming from the most materialistic reasons, they come to parikrama so they can get a good grade in their exams or get a nice child or get a good husband or wife or win an election or whatever they come around for. They get their desires fulfilled and they feel happy, they feel at home. Because that relationship, because that atmosphere. In other places, Krishna never shows openly the moods of all the relationships that he has with all the Brajbasis, all in one place, all at one time. When he's in, Nandagram, he can't, look at Radharani right in front of everybody. But there he does. I mean, Yogamayas can cause the Brajbasis to think that that he's just looking at them and he's looking at no one else, and in that way he gets away with it, But yeah, it's a big topic. Thanks for asking.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna. I think I will, with the permission of the Vaishnavas, wind it up now. It's getting a little late. I want to know how these new microphones work. I guess we don't have any comments yet, do we? Did we get any comments? I wonder if Rati was listening.
Not about the sound quality itself.
But
People offering their obeisances.
Any comments? Questions? Comments? It was pretty intense by Pundarik's grace. Pretty intense. Yes, Hare Krishna Dasi, please.
I want to be very gentle with this, Maharaj. I would like to express our very deep gratitude, Maharaj, that we've been able to join you and this wonderful association group at this autumn time in England, and reading these beautiful chapters about autumn in Vrindavan. I'm just really so grateful for the ambience and the atmosphere and the love and devotion that you bring to this otherwise dry existence really we have. And in the verses we read, it's about how a pure devotee brings, was it to do with the skies and the real moon behind the clouds, that when that appears you actually meet you meet Krishna consciousness. So through you we really felt being able to connect, and I'm just so grateful and really touched. And with your blessings, these readings continue all over, wherever we all go. Maybe we can somehow, bring more and more people to.
The first thing to do
is to join myself.
Is to get on Facebook.
The Facebook.
So that you can listen to them.
I have to face the Facebook.
No, the thing is, you don't have to get involved in the Facebook.
Yeah.
All you have to do is just get the Facebook, and then you go to this page, and you can watch it whenever you want.
Yes.
And then all the other things that people do, this friend, this, you just don't have to respond at all.
We're very fortunate because from having had very little time to read and study, Guru Maharaj, through his blessings, we're now retired and he's instructed us to read and chant. So we've been getting more and more opportunity to read and chant. And so I think at the moment we were quite buried under the books and in the quiet. But to appear back onto Facebook will be the next step.
Yeah, just don't think of it as appearing back on Facebook.
Yeah.
Don't think of it as appearing back on Facebook, because then you'll think of getting absorbed in all these people's lives and having to answer all these things and friends and this. You don't have to do any of that. Just go onto this page and just listen.
Well, we certainly felt that what you're saying is really, really, really true, and we just have to go and connect when we return home. But thank you very much. In person here, it is just so live.
Take it as an invitation.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your invitation.
Thank you very much for your appreciation, because I think that these, first of all, like I said before when we started, this is a unique product, that we're doing this every day. And Rati said once, this is many, many months ago, she sent me a message, not during the readings, but in Skype chat. She said something to the effect that, Maharaj, because you're there every single day, without fail, for all this time, the Bhagavatam is coming live for me. And it really helped her. So I just made my life, really made my day and my life, because this is what I want. This is all I want.
Can I say just one more thing, Maharaj? It really takes me to the time when I can say that you didn't really start this a year or year and a half ago, because I remember you starting it in our little kitchen with my 3 little boys playing around my knees as I cooked for you and our Guru Maharaj, who had Pundrik Prabhu taken to the hospital.
Yeah.
And there I was grinding the spices on the floor and making the chants on the hob. And you sat at the kitchen table reading to me from the nectar of instruction, while the 3 boys played wildly and make so much noise. And there I was cooking, and you just kept on reading and reading and reading to me, which is really amazing. And thank you so much for all those years ago, and you're still doing the same now with so many more children.
Ananda Buddhi Vardhanam.
Ananda Buddhi Vardhanam.
The bliss.
So I'm very, very grateful.
Prabhupada's books are everything. They're everything. All the answers to individual problems and international problems and collective problems, our inner movement, outside of it, it's all there. It's all there. All we have to do is read it and surrender and just try to follow, because who can follow nowadays in Kali Yuga? But whatever we can do, if we just do, we become filled up. Magic. Magic books, Srila Prabhupada's books are magic. Okay, thank you so much everyone out there in cyberspace. I mean, we're up to 1,780 or maybe more followers that read, and I guess I just looked just momentarily and I saw that we're up to around 500 daily, maybe more. Average. And so it's amazing. Just in last year in heaven, we started here. Of course, it was Wisteria College, wasn't in this place, but still it was here in Hode Farm that we started. And, it's not the last day, but still, who knows, maybe, but the way Priya Kund and Shamagori are taking care of us, I mean, it's just out of this world. The attention to the detail, the genuine love and affection that is there, in the cooking and the caring, and it's making me healthier and stronger and capable of. So you'll never get rid of me. No way. I know there was a rumor last year that I would stay there and just do these audiobooks because, let's just face the facts. I've been working on this Chaitanya Charitamrita for more than a year, Of course, now we're into it. We were rehearsing and getting it right, and so many things, and then we had to make the booth and improve the quality to bring it up to the BPT standard that Brahma Muhurta wanted. But now it's all set up, it's going, Rasika Shiromani, I'd like to speak something about him because maybe he's listening, maybe he's not, but maybe he'll listen. If he's not listening, maybe he'll listen later. But he came down from Denver, and the persons who were helping me record, one after the other, just stopped because they both had babies. Well, they didn't have babies; their wives had babies, but they just stopped being able to do anything. And I was like, it was going to stop, and I was going crazy. And then Rasika agreed to come down, and Tushta Krishna, the temple president of Denver, agreed to let him come down, and he just took like a duck takes to water, like really, really intense, and he's fully absorbed and committed. He's lifelong brahmachari practically. He was a monk, Eastern Orthodox monk before he became a devotee. Yeah, he's over 50 years old, and very serious person. And he's doing wonderful. I played some for some of you. Later I'll play for the others that haven't heard yet, the sample. But but anyway, so, it's going to take, we're in the 22nd chapter of Madhya Lila. We've been doing this for 9.5 months, almost 10 months now, right? So just do the math. And for every hour of recording, it takes 2 to 4 hours of editing. So do the math, and then think of doing the whole Bhagavatam like that. You're talking minimum 4 or 5 years. So that brings me to 77, 78. And at the state I'm in now, by that time, I don't know what I'm going to be able to do. But so therefore, I was thinking maybe I should stay in Houston and do it. But I think the break helps me actually, health-wise, and just I'm a sannyasi. I like to travel. I don't like to stay in one place all the time. But I'm doing it, and I'll continue to do it because the facility is there. All I have to do is walk right next door to where the studio is. That's it. I don't go out into other things, but it's helpful. It's very helpful, and facilities are very nice also. So, yeah, I think I'll make this and maybe I won't go all the way to India starting next year. You know, because it's a definitely another level of you know, traveling that far and living in India at that time is definitely another level of, you know, austerity. Yeah. So let's see. But definitely I'll be coming here. And maybe coming here, going back, and getting medicines I need here, and who knows, we were talking with Pundarik and Hare Krishna Dasi about my physical situation. Let's see, it's up in the air how to do that and what I need to do in order to. I haven't been doing really anything except I get these special Ayurvedic treatments which are helping. But in order to prepare, he gave me, Pundarik today gave me a very, I knew it, but I hadn't heard it directly from an authority, so I was kind of avoiding it. But I think I have to do some physiotherapy before I get strong enough to actually do, if I was to get a hip replacement or something like that. So let's see. Whether it be here, NH system, I can do it for free. You know, but I'd have to stay here for quite a while. And to put off that work, considering how long it's going to take and how long I might be here, I mean, it's really, I keep coming up with just one thing. Just keep doing it until the audiobook's done and then deal with it if I have to. That's where I'm at in my contemplation so far. Anyway, now I'm waxing sentimental, so Hare Krishna. Thank you all very much. Thank you all out there in cyberspace. You're all wonderful, and sharing this Prabhupada nectar with you has become my life and soul, and I will never give it up. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gopis of Vrindavan ki jai. Songs of the Gopis ki jai. Wonderful autumn of Vrindavan ki jai. The beauty of Sri Vrindavan Dham ki jai. Gaur Premanandi. See you all tomorrow night, same place, same station, same time. Haribol.